Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Sunday. And we really are having a great time producing this podcast. And from the response we're getting, it seems like you're also really enjoying it. So it's just been a new way for us to be able to communicate a little further than just the sermon. So today, in this episode, I have a couple of new folks. Have either one of you done this?
I've done it once before.
Okay.
Yes.
So you know John
Yeah.
Orozco. And so John leads all of our worship teams across all the campuses. And then this is Christina Vandenhoevel. And Christina and her husband, Christian, have been on our staff for how many years now?
17.
17 years. And so Christina plays a very important role in a lot of our ministries. The two that I'm the most aware of is her teaching ministry and her helping with actually preparing the sermons. Christina, for years, has worked with me on the sermons, and then also with the worship teams. If you're in Livermore, you'll see her on the keyboards. And what else do you do around here? You write the study guide,
Yep.
or you're one of the writers.
Yeah, one of the writers.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just great to have you guys. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how, after four of these sermons, I mean, we all grew up hearing 1 Corinthians 13.
Mm-hmm.
How has this been fresh to you? How has it been impacting you, John?
In a few ways, I think something that we've been saying over and over again is, one, love is something that you first have to receive in order to be able to give it. And it's caused me to kind of take pause and ask questions like, how well am I receiving love from God? And what am I doing to sort of fill those gaps in my own life to replace like the love of God with things that I try to manufacture myself? And so it's been interesting to kind of measure the way that I love others against this chapter that Paul wrote, that he really wanted these Corinthians to understand, and us too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one, it's that, and then two, it's kind of drawing out this really important question of how well am I loving not only this church, but my family, and are there things that I'm doing right now that would sort of like enhance the quality of love that I have for them, based out of what I'm reading and learning from this. So it's really affected me in those two spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you, Christina?
Well, I think for me, I'm really seeing, and God's great at always pulling in not just the sermon series, but like other studies I've heard recently, but just understanding how God sees me and being able to see him move and work in my life, and then how that can pour out into how I see other people. Over the summer, Christian and I read the book Love Does by Bob Goff. And one thing that he said that like really struck a chord with Christian, he even got a little keychain that says 30 on it, but it's, can you obey God for 30 seconds? Like maybe not the whole day, maybe not the whole hour, but can you obey God for 30 seconds? And that's been on my mind this whole time. Can I love somebody for 30 seconds?
How's it going?
Well, it's going great because it makes you stop and like consider, like, let me listen to them, mm-hmm. or let me like calm myself down. Like if it's one of my kids or something, like I'm in a moment of
your children are perfect.
Practically,
that, yeah.
They're all named Mary Poppins. But if I just respond and don't just stop and just go like, let me just stop for 30 seconds and just like think about, they're tired, it's the end of the day, let me ask them a question, uh-huh. and it like just it refocuses the frame that I'm looking through. Same with if I'm in the line at a grocery store or dealing with, just someone on the road, like I need to like try to love that person for 30 seconds. And it really changes everything.
And it doesn't, and so after that 30 seconds, that was all you needed to reset?
Most of the time.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So in the sermon, I make the comment that the Bay Area is a great place to live, except that it's lacking in love. And it has been lacking in love since right after the summer of love. So what did you think about that? Like, do you see that living in the Bay Area? Do you see the lack of love?
Yeah, I see in myself, because I'm here. So like, there's a lack of love even in me in certain circumstances, and I see this sort of deficit in making decisions, conscious decisions that are like intended to make someone else's life sort of feel a sense of value and belonging, and like, I see you and I care about you. Most of the things that we do when we move throughout the day revolve around us getting our needs met, and they revolve around us sort of checking off the boxes for the things that sort of we need, that we require to live really what we would call good lives. But life is so connected, and you're in your neighborhoods and you're in your cities, you're moving through just different parts of the town, and you run into so many people, and sometimes you get to this place where I didn't see anyone today. I didn't actually see you. Everything was real transactional, but it was based on sort of me fulfilling my needs. And so one thing that I notice here in the Bay is that there's just sort of a lot of that sort of mindset of, and it's not like no one's doing anything to really like make somebody else's day terrible, but the thoughtfulness about the other person, like that 30-second thing that you're saying, where like my intention for being here is based on meeting your needs and who you are and sort of caring for you. Like, that's something that suddenly takes a back seat. And it's sort of a passive way to live. You kind of have to actively pursue like what you're talking about. You have to sort of apply yourself to that. Otherwise, you kind of fall back into this me first mentality, which you see out here. Yeah.
Would you add anything to that?
Definitely, just that we're so busy, and busyness. Like, I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. They're all in different seasons. They all need to be different places. So it's like that list, like you're talking about. I live off lists, and it's just constantly have to get, this to this to this to this. It's definitely easy to just like blitz past people and not care, because you don't see them. You're just trying to, and you might not even have a heart of like, it's just me, but it's like, I've got to get this stuff done, because if I don't, then the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then
and that creates impatience.
Right.
And Paul says specifically, love is not impatient.
Right.
And so busyness and impatience is the opposite of love. But how difficult is this for us living here? Because how do you check out of that and still be here?
It's really hard. I mean, I'd say it this way. Imagine going to a gas station thinking, I'm going to fill up my tank for me. But the reason why you actually went there, and you didn't realize it, but the Lord sent you there to meet somebody else and to meet their need. It's like this sort of flip of why I'm going to the grocery store to get my groceries. Maybe I need to say a kind word or do something really loving for somebody that's here. And so my activity isn't always even for me.
Right.
Like, it's maybe the people that I'm going to encounter when I go about my day doing the things that I do. And that sort of shift in thinking, especially in a culture like this in the Bay Area that's very impatient, and it's very sort of me-focused and getting the things I need to get done, it flips us into this really loving way of going about our day.
One thing that I've tried to do since I do all the grocery shopping for my family is when I get to the checkout, even if it's been a frustrating line experience, is to look at the checker and say and ask, how are you doing? Put my phone down, put my purse down, look at the checker.
And sometimes they're like, what?
Yeah, and they're like, they don't always respond in kind, but it's like I can smile and I can be kind. It's free.
You should go to Florida. My parents and my sister live in Florida, and it's so frustrating to go anywhere retail because everybody's just chatting it up, and you're just trying to get some bread and some milk and get on, and you're trying to be a Californian. Now, they're looking at you like, why are you in such a hurry today? And they will not cooperate. They are just like not having it because they believe that your life stinks. And you should be more like them. And you need to talk a little bit more about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Slow down a little bit.
And I have been in, just like going, could you just hurry up? And then I'm like, what in the world is wrong with me?
Yeah. And I feel that same way as a parent. I travel over the Altamont Pass every day out here, and so I hang out on the freeway with my friends for about an hour every day after work. And patience is like something that I need. I have 4 kids, and so when you get home and you need to like slow down and hear the stories, or it's bedtime and you have to do all those bedtime routines, and one of those routines that my wife is amazing at, just so faithful at, reading books with the boys, and inevitably the boys will pick the longest book.
Right.
And it's kind of like,
yeah, can we read
feels like
Moby
it's a
Dick
novel
before we go to bed tonight?
And you're like, no.
Tale of Two Cities.
Have you ever tried to skip a page?
Absolutely.
And they catch you?
Skip a page, make stuff up, but like they have no context, and they really don't, even if they did have context, it wouldn't matter. Like, they need me to slow down and be patient with them and really loving, and let's just maneuver through this book in a really like a gentle way. My thought and my thinking sometimes is I've been so sort of forced into patience on this freeway that now I'm feeling forced into patience through this book, and for my sons or for my daughters, like, they need me to slow down and just, again, it's active. It's not a passive thing that we just naturally flow into this really patient, loving posture. You have to work at it. And so I think this series is really drawing that out. Yeah.
You were gonna say?
Well, I have a little story.
I love your
okay,
stories.
It happened yesterday. So I substitute for the Livermore Valley School District, and I sub for a 10th grade class. It was an English class, and they had to take a midterm, which is like a sub's delight because they just take a test the whole period, and you just kind of walk around, make sure they're not cheating. Or whatever, or leave the room, Anyway, so this particular teacher, it's the first teacher I've ever experienced that did this, and it was awesome and horrible and awesome. She had a pocket chart on the board, and when they came in, they had to all turn their phones in. So it's all numbered, so you could see. And in one period, I discovered that about 3 or 4 of the students actually took their phone out and just put their case on there. And then one kid put a calculator in there. The nerve. Anyway, but then I wised to it.
She doesn't know the difference between a phone and a
No,
calculator.
she's younger than me.
No, they're thinking about you.
Oh, right. I heard.
Oh,
she's a smart one.
Oh,
That's
no.
what I heard.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the next period, so same thing, midterm. So they're taking a test. And the class was it was an hour long, and the teacher had said it will take some of the students the whole period to take the test. So I said, when you're done with the test, you have to keep your test. You can read a book, you can take a nap, you can work on something else, but you cannot get your phone, and you can't, you have to be quiet. Well, for the kids that finished first, it was like torture. My phone is up there. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. And a few of them were so rude because they're just like, oh. And they would call out a student's name and say, like, hurry up and finish so we can get our phones back. And yes. And I was horrified because I felt really bad for the kids that were still working on their test. Like, there was no regard at all for that. Just because I'm done doesn't mean you're done. Like, the quiet that I was afforded, I should grant that to other kids. So I did take it upon myself at the end to give them a tiny little lecture about
good for you,
about respect, and they got offended. So, and then they're like, "Why are you looking at me?" I'm like,
"Because I'm talking to you."
Yeah. But it brought up, just having worked on these notes, like, we're so self-absorbed and so selfish. It is a practice that we have to practice with intention to put ourselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
We don't know what that person's struggling with, what kind of day they've had, how they grew up.
Right.
We don't know anything, but we're just like, you're in my way. You're taking too long on your test, and I need my phone.
Isn't that fascinating how 1 Corinthians 13 translates to I need my phone? Because it does. Yeah. It translates to I want, me, versus the love of God, which is absolutely not about himself. Like, God doesn't need us. He doesn't need to love us. He doesn't need, but he loves us because he is who he is, and he can't stop being that way. Okay, so let's talk about the unconditional love of God. We keep bringing this up in this series. First of all, I was raised by parents who loved me unconditionally. How about you guys?
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah, I was.
So we are at a tremendous advantage over, and what I'm finding out is a bunch of our congregation. I was shocked when I just asked the question, how many of you felt like you've never been loved unconditionally? How many people? One guy came up afterwards and he was weeping and he said, not only have I never been loved unconditionally, I'm not sure I've ever really been loved. I would take conditional love if I could find it. And I was like, wow. So what kind of handicap do you think when you run into someone and you can tell that they keep score, their love is conditional? Now, they learned that, okay? I know you expect children to act like that, but there are adults that act like that. What other handicaps do you think that we have if we have just not been soaked in enough unconditional love when it comes to our relationship with God and our relationship with others? What jumps out at you?
I would say there is a sort of blindness that you develop, and it would take, like you said, you can only know what love is by being loved, and that it sort of creates this gap in your life where you're sort of at a disadvantage, that hopefully the people that are around you who maybe carry like a deeper love will empathize with you. And if they see those gaps, they won't sort of apply like, no, you should be this loving or this understanding or this kind or this forgiving or this patient. Like, it's on us to, especially as a church, and us as a church, a group of people who come and continually encounter the love of God, to meet those who we sense, man, there's like a gap, there's a handicap like you're talking about that you just can't get past. And you know what, it's okay. Like, I'm going to be patient with you, I'm going to be kind with you, because this is what I'm taught. And it's not that it's just this cognitive thing that we have to just apply this real sense of deep logic to a certain circumstance, like Billy was talking about last week. It is really healthy and really helpful, not only for us, but for them as well, to have somebody wait with them and be patient with them as they're moving through whatever that handicap is, that blind spot is that they don't see. And I think that can draw out sort of them understanding the real nature of love in their own lives. Yeah.
I think that gap that you're talking about becomes a barrier too, so that even if somebody is showing love, unconditional love, like they can't even trust it, like it feels really uncomfortable,
right?
And you can't believe it.
You're like, I don't trust. Yeah, this is not. You're trying to manipulate me,
right?
Yeah, or you want something.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, if you've always grown up with you have to pay to get your love, it's very hard. Even when Jesus tries to pay for your forgiveness, you're like, no, I still have to pay him back.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
When you think about loving others, it is awfully hard to love others in a healthy way if you don't love yourself in a healthy way. And most people love themselves in one way or another, but in some ways it's kind of unhealthy. You know, they'll go out and buy something for themselves that they can't afford to like treat themselves. Or they'll say, well, I'm really tired, so I'm going to have that extra glass of wine, or I'm going to eat, or just all the different unhealthy ways that we love ourselves. And even when it comes to really crazy stuff like extramarital affairs and just different things we do, and we excuse it by saying, well, I need this because I need to feel a certain way. Even though I was raised with tremendous amounts of unconditional love, I think sometimes I act very unloving towards myself. Do you relate to that? Like, I perpetuate an inner voice sometimes where I'll even actually cut someone else a break and I won't do it for myself. Like there's like a harsh person inside of me driving me. I think that's really opposite of 1 Corinthians 13. Like, hey, Steve, love is patient, so be patient with yourself. Love is kind. be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Love isn't rude, and the way you're treating yourself is rude.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Does that ring a bell at all? With
Yeah. To have grace for yourself. I mean, we tell other people to do that all the time. I tell that to my son Noah, because he's real hard on himself, and I see it. And hard on himself in a less guarded way, where the tears will come, and man, I'm just not good at this. I can't. And you go, no, hey, you're learning about life, and you're learning these different concepts in school, and and maybe you made a mistake here with a friend, and it accidentally upset them. But I know you want to be an amazing friend to them. That was just an accident, So just give yourself some grace. You're learning, and knowing that God is patient with us, and He is willing to walk us through whatever sort of shortcomings we have, because we'll beat ourselves up about those shortcomings. I should be this good. I should be this. I've been a Christian for 20 years. I've been a Christian for 40 years. Like, I should be past this. Give yourself some grace and allow God to move you through that. And I have to do that all the time, because I'm my own worst critic on so many levels. But these reminders that we get from 1 Corinthians 13, and I like that we as a church are memorizing this right now.
right.
Because in those moments when you're feeling, just really downcast, to be able to know this is what love is, and this is what I'm going to apply to my own life. I think that's important.
Yeah. And we're not memorizing so we can go, okay, I need to be more patient, more kind, more. We're memorizing it because we say, I need to receive God's patience for me, and then just give that out to myself and to other people. Yeah. And I need to recognize that comes from an inexhaustible source of love. And it doesn't cost me.
Yeah.
I always feel like I get the word picture of a glass of water that's like filled all the way up. If I let God's love fill me all the way up and I get knocked, like that's what's going to spill out.
Right.
Versus if it's only half full.
Right. Or if there's something else in there, there's bitterness or something toxic.
Yeah.
All right. So do you think that as God's love pours in, that just naturally washes out a lot of things that we couldn't have gotten out any other way? Like, I just picture Him just soaking me in His love, and then it just changes what was there. Like, there's just no room. There's the volume of me. There's no room for what used to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the hard part sometimes, again, we're so busy that maybe we don't even take time to let it sit and soak.
Yeah.
And that's why memorizing it is so great, because you takes intention to memorize. But also some of the things that might bubble up to the surface are painful and uncomfortable, and we don't want to look at it. We don't want to address it.
Sure.
And so then it's easy just to not do it. Just to avoid it. And
busyness is always the excuse. Yeah. Yeah, and I would like to say, because we're getting ready to wrap this up, but I would like to say to those of you, we're with us finishing the 4th sermon. We have actually 2 more sermons in this series before we move to the next series. If you have not spent enough time pondering these things, well, first of all, good for you for watching this, because that means you are taking some extra time. But do take some extra time. And as you memorize, let's say you haven't been doing the memorization piece, and so you're thinking, I don't know if I can. Just do 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, and then the first 3 words of verse 8, where it says love never fails. If you just memorized 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, with a little bit of 8, you would really get the depth of what we're talking about here. Because what Paul is describing here is the personality of God as expressed in Jesus. And when we receive Jesus, we receive that person into ourselves. And so He begins to replace our unkindness with kindness. And He begins to replace our selfishness with selflessness. And where we always notice that other people do it wrong, He replaces that to the point where we just say, I'm not going to notice that. I'm going to forgive them. And of course, the epitome is Christ on the cross. Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. Or how Jesus had to forgive Peter, who said, I'll never betray you. And He's like, Peter, tonight you're going to betray me. But then for Him to be forgiving and loving in that regard. And So I hope as these weeks have gone by that you're not taking away, well, I'm none of these things. I'm not a very good Christian. That instead you're saying, Jesus can still change me. And there are reasons why that there are blockages in certain ones of these attributes. And so that's the final question I would lead you with. Let's share with each other. As you think of all these 1 Corinthians 13 attributes, does one jump out at you and you say, that's the one I really need Jesus to work on in the next 90 days for me personally? What would you say?
Patience, I would say, with me. I notice I move sort of in the direction of my dominant thoughts. And my dominant thoughts are very future-based. And I want the next thing to happen. And I'm planning for the next thing to come. And so anything that stands in the way of that activity happening, it sort of pulls me out of moments when I need to just be present and be loving. And so the value of patience right now, that's something that's really
okay, good.
I'm
Thank
working
you.
on. Yeah.
What about you, Christina?
I feel very vulnerable.
Well, you don't have to
No,
share.
I
if you
will.
don't-
I will. I will.
Okay. You do want to come back someday, so you actually have to be vulnerable. That's how this works, you know.
I think it would be that love keeps no record of wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't have a score pad or anything like that. But you know,
Right.
when
I think it's very natural to do that. Or even that whole, it's not fair. It's not fair. Yeah.
or if one little thing happens, maybe with my husband, I'll remember a bunch of other things, and it might have happened 15 years ago, and I have to just
Yeah, you're like,
I'm like, oh,
why do I still have
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
don't tell him.
Yeah. Don't worry, he doesn't watch
doesn't
this. He's way too busy. So I would say love is not easily angered. There are certain ways that you can provoke me to anger pretty quickly. I discovered this again about myself the other day on the golf course. I invited my nephew and my son, and we went out and played golf. And there were these guys playing behind us that were drunk and being really loud and obnoxious. So I was already annoyed at them, and their language was really harsh. But then they hit a ball, and it hit my nephew so hard that it knocked him down. Now that happens on the golf course, and what you do is you yell for, and you really make sure people know there's a ball coming. Well, they didn't, and they hit him, and when it knocked him down, at first he didn't even know what happened. And then we could hear them. They were laughing. They were talking about what a baby he was for falling down or whatever. I got so mad that if I was yelling at these guys, and I even said a profane word that I was embarrassed that I said. And I noticed I went from 0 to I want to kill you in and it was because they hurt my nephew, and then they laughed at him. And there's certain things that can provoke me to anger, where in other ways I'm like, oh, I'm so patient, no big deal. And then, boy, there's certain, and I remember feeling really embarrassed and telling the Lord, still got a long way to go. So that's all of us, gang. We still got a long way to go. You're in the right church, though, because we're all just a bunch of bucketheads, but we're saved, and Jesus is changing us. So I would say make the most of 1 Corinthians 13. Memorize it, and let Jesus then, don't ever let the devil use it to shame you or accuse you. Just let Jesus change you. So thanks for being with me today.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. We love you.